Hello, welcome to part 3 of my bodybuilding bikini competition videos. If you haven't seen the other two parts, the first one I talk about competing in bodybuilding, how I got into it, my history on weight training, and what it's like to compete. And then part 2, I talk more about my body image, my relationship with food, and also like the important lessons that I learned from it. And part 3, which is this video, is going to be why I quit and where I'm at now with it. If you saw my first video, I qualified for the nationals by placing second in the BCs. So I was taking another year to prep for that. I was doing the bikini coaching, and then this is also around the same time that I got really into psychedelics. Between my first and my second show, I got into mushrooms and I started really exploring consciousness and spirituality and psychedelics. So I think this led up to it. So after BCs, I kind of took some time off. I was still training, bikini coaching, working in meal prep, working in supplement store, all that. But I wasn't really actively prepping for my next show. I was still gaining muscle, but I wasn't like cutting because I knew it was a year away. I just kind of kept tabs on not like going overboard like last time and gained a bunch of weight for the sake of binge eating. So I kind of like kept it pretty chill this time. I had a better support system, and I kind of knew better what I was doing after all my learning in the first 2 years, well, a year and a half. So by being in this, I also noticed how unhappy a lot of people are. I noticed a lot of like internal struggles, whether it's like body image or just self-confidence, that people may be escaping from or gaining a way of control over their lives through doing something this strict and regimented. Not saying that applies for everybody. I just noticed that there were portions of people who had underlying stuff that weren't being resolved, but yet outwardly they present as like well or healthy. And I noticed those patterns in myself as well. I wasn't really completely happy with what I was doing. So I got interested in learning more about like emotional, mental, and spiritual wellness, which led me to going into a program that's for holistic wellness counseling. So I started going to counseling school. And the way that this school is different from like a normal university is it's very hands-on, and a lot of it is personal work. I didn't exactly know what I was getting into when I signed up, but then like a week into the course, when like every day we're like crying and like digging into our deepest like family histories and traumas to like deal with them essentially in like a therapy setting, I was like, okay, this is going to require like 100% of my attention, which does not fit with bodybuilding. Bodybuilding as a sport, if you want to be, competitive in it, as I think like anything else in life, if you really want to like be an expert or like masterful at something, you have to commit it and make it a part of your lifestyle. So I knew what it took to prep for a bodybuilding show, and I knew what I felt like going into it. When you're really depleted, you're not all there all the time. Like you get very tired. You're constantly thinking about food because you're always hungry. And I just knew that I couldn't do both at the same time. And I knew that this counseling wellness thing is like a life calling, like being able to help other people and help myself do this work is more important to me than another bodybuilding show. But, I felt like committed because I was like, I think 5 weeks into my like prep before I started noticing that like, hey, maybe I can't do this. The Canadian Nationals, I think that year was in Halifax. And I was like looking at flights, looking at the prices of the hotels and the competition and like all these things that go into it, like the tan and the hair and the like bikini. And I was just like, I don't care enough to do this. Like I don't want to get that lean again. I don't want to spend like $1,000 to go to Halifax to compete in a show. I don't care if I win. I'm not going to, because I know the level it requires to be at the nationals. And for my body to do that, it would probably need more steroids and a boob job. And I didn't want that. Not saying that that's what you need to do, but for me, like I knew that if I wanted to even have a chance at maybe winning it, is going to take a lot more than what I'm willing to put in. And I didn't want to just do it for the shits and giggles and the experience anymore, because I experience competitions. I know what I learned from it. I know what it takes from me. And I think I had enough at that point. All these factors considered, I decided that I was going to quit. I went full force into my counseling course and was also doing yoga teacher training at the same time later on. and just like really explored my mental, emotional, and spiritual landscapes, and started working a lot more with like plant medicines like mushrooms, ayahuasca, and ended up going traveling in Mexico. And those were all things that I probably couldn't have accomplished or done if I had decided to keep competing in bodybuilding. Do I regret any of those experiences? No, I learned so much, and there's so much about myself, my physical body, other people, and the way that it just led me to where I am now. Like, I am so grateful for that chapter of my life, as bizarre and far away it may seem now, and far from what I would be doing now. At the time, I honestly loved it, enjoyed it, and I learned so much from it. Where I'm at now, I feel like I'm pretty balanced with my food. I have become conscious in my consumption. Like, now it's not just about the macros and the fats and the carbs. Now I'm paying more attention, using that awareness to see, where does my food come from? Like, how is it made? I don't really eat meat anymore, because when I really sit with the feeling of what it took for this to be here, I didn't think it's worth it for my like mouth enjoyment. So now I'm taking that awareness and consciousness in my food and taking it to a level of like eating nutritiously and eating in a way that's sustainable for my body and for the environment as much as possible. Growing my food, trying to at least trying to be as mindful as possible about what I'm eating and really connecting with my food rather than just seeing it as like calorie consumption. Bodybuilding actually did really teach me to enjoy simple foods. Like, when you're that hungry, like boiled broccoli is a godsend, and I fell in love with peanut butter. Like, I got so content with just like simple foods because it means I'm eating. So that's like a bonus. Like, that enjoyment and love for food still carries with me now. Like, I love just like simple ingredients. I don't need a lot of, like oils and spices to enjoy it. Like, I love the natural flavors of my food, and it got me not drinking alcohol. Really, there's a lot of other reasons of why I don't drink alcohol. Maybe one day I'll go into that story, but a big contributing factor to why I completely quit drinking alcohol is because it didn't fit into my diet plan. And after not drinking for like that long, I'm like, wait, I don't even miss it. Because once I start drinking again, I become such a lightweight that I felt horrible, because I have that Asian gene where we're like kind of borderline intolerant to it anyways. So I just felt extra horrible. So I'm like, you know what? I don't need that in my life. I was fine for months without it. It doesn't add to my life whatsoever. I don't really eat like processed sugar because it's way too sweet. The level of sweetness I can enjoy is probably like natural fruits. Other than that, like candy and stuff, I just like, it's overwhelmingly sweet. So it kind of was a great detox for my body to not drink, not eat sugar. So now my palate is pretty light. I also mentioned before that it's been years. It's 2020. I quit in 2016, but I still notice sometimes those tics of hyper aware of, yeah, like about like carbs and fats and stuff like that. I don't know if like my like more compulsive eating developed from that, or was it always there and now I'm just aware of it. But now I'm aware of, sometimes I have this compulsive eating habit, especially later on at night. Like, I would eat because I'm tired or bored rather than because I'm hungry. Yeah, just trying to catch myself in that as much as possible and not always like fall into that. Otherwise, my relationship with movement has really changed. Bodybuilding got me really well trained in weightlifting and even powerlifting, because a lot of my friends were competitive powerlifters. So I got really knowledgeable in the gym area. But now that I don't really go to the gym all the time, especially not in lockdown, I still have a passion and love for movement and training. So I've moved that more towards like dance, acro, circus. Because before that, I was a competitive cheerleader, got a bunch of concussions, and then went into bodybuilding. So my athletic life has been always competitive. And it's nice to now be in a place where I just like move for the love of it. I train because I want a stronger core to have better balance when I'm like doing certain moves. Or I want to have better pull-ups because I want to be better at aerials. And training all around because I want to eventually get a handstand. So it's more like goal and movement and like love oriented rather than I want to win a competition. I want to look a certain way, which like is its own driving factor, but it's nice to now be like more internally passionately driven for like creative expression rather than competition. In terms of eating, I'm much less of a meat eater. You know, I used to eat egg whites, chicken, and whitefish. Occasionally I would get steak, and that's like a highlight of the week. But now I like don't really eat meat. Like I will sometimes eat meat if my parents are making food. It's like the only option. Or when I'm traveling and someone like made a meal for me and like it's there. But like on my own, I don't really purchase meat. I don't cook meat. It's now just like a part of my life. And I'm not saying that you have to eat meat to bodybuild either, because I do know vegan and vegetarian bodybuilders, so it is doable. I just at the time I wasn't really exploring that avenue. Let me know if you have any other questions or experiences. Maybe send this to a person who's thinking about competing or has competed and has been dealing with some of the same issues. I would be more than happy to share how I got from where I was to where I am here now, because it did take a lot of looking internally and falling on my face and asking for help. It's a hard transition to make, and I feel like I could maybe talk more about that, but going from that mindset and that lifestyle and switching to a new way of relating with yourself is really challenging, actually, and something that I'm always still learning about. Thank you all for watching. You made it to part 3. If you want to watch the other 2 videos, they will be linked somewhere over here. Okay, bye.